Next build. Here's the overview. These are Proline flat iron tires, some RC four-wheel drive steel wheels, which I've slapped some hardware together on to actually get them to where they're assembled, and then just a whole bunch of junk in between. So, these are some really beat up Tamiya high lift axles I ended up picking up for I think 30 bucks with some other parts a long time ago, and then I'm using a really specific Kyosho Nitro, like 90-degree angle, like steering bell crank for some Nitro buggy that makes it where off of the same Tamiya, like there's a whole bunch of spots where you can assemble hardware on these. I just made it where it was a hinge point underneath where the actual upper, well, forelink is, to where it just ran the steering linkage all the way back to our, however, what was that, kilogram? It's not bad, actually. 35 kilogram steering servo, and just using another really weird little piece of linkage is what controls our steering. For the most part, I don't have bump steer. I could play around with where the servo is at and try and get rid of it a bit more, but it's not terrible. It's more so I need to clearance a few things out around the chassis where it hasn't rusted away for this to actually steer as much as I want to, as well as possibly have the rear steer at some point. This is just some steel I scabbed in while this thing literally just had a rust hole all the way up through this side, and that's why there's a pillar here, adding some structural rigidity back to this. This is parts of the Capri door like linkage. I just seen it while I was cleaning up, and I was playing around with welding steel in while I was getting, well, I got a new gas cylinder for the welder and was playing with welding stuff and getting the settings dialed in, and just cut the Capri linkage down and just started making the cage. Turned out pretty cool. So back on point with this. Random hardware, some old Kyosho Rampage shocks I had, or no, they're actually from a Kyosho Circuit 10 or some kind of mid-80s nitro buggy. Or it was just something, just generic Kyosho. So threw that together with what I had for this truck, which this is like a 70s Tonka Jeepster. It used to be a stump, or yeah, they called them a stump jumper version of the Tonka Comanche. I mean, it used to have an extra frame down below and some taller wheels and so forth, but it's just a bunch of junk, really. And then parts of a Festiva hood is what I used for the steel over here, and what I ended up using to make the whole plate that the ESC and battery and all that's sitting on, that I used to help add structure back to the frame back here, as well as bend it and then tie it down to the actual remaining frame of the Tonka. Which, a big part of it was I wanted a low profile Tonka that, well, it has a decent amount of suspension, which is kind of cool in my opinion. So going from that, eBay special, it was like $38 or $35. It's a clone of an axial transmission. I'm using a Traxxas 550 size, like Titan motor. All this stuff was just, for the most part, the only things I bought were these wheels and tires off the marketplace from somebody, and then that transmission. Everything else is just kind of junk I collected for quite a while. So some all thread is what made the upper links with some Durabro whatever link or ball ends for it, and then just some Traxxas like ball ends along with some Red Cat. I think it was like Everest 10 linkages or something I had sitting around forever, and then some like Traxxas parts mixed in with these, what was it, like Tamiya CR01 drive shaft pieces I had extras of from that Structo build, because the guy gave me a whole bunch of extra parts. And I'm going to be careful not to destroy my table because it's actually nice. We're going to, there we go, do this. So, made some steering lockouts for the rear axle. Tamiya high lift axles are actually the exact same as the rear as is the front. So to lock it out, I just kind of used some more of the extra holes these axles have and just made it where there's a little, or like a drag link tying the axle to the knuckle and just locks it out. Just really simple stuff where I just made it work with garbage I kind of had sitting around. So not a whole lot going on there. You could see where I was kind of booger welded stuff, but like I said, I was dialing in the welder and I couldn't get gas to turn on until towards the end of it when I started making the cage and I found out the valve was still closed. So not a whole lot to it. I tried to make it where I had as much room for the links to move them around to make it where I had a good geometry going on so this thing actually can flex and be stable. So there's still a bit of tweaking going on with it. I've had a lot of fun just kind of throwing this thing together out of just junk. So I'm going to try and show you inside of the rusted out bodywork of this. So you'll see I ended up using some Tamiya Grasshopper style mounts for the upper links, which are, I don't even know if I can show you, right here above my finger. So did that on the other side and kind of triangulated the front suspension. Just cool stuff like that. So not a whole lot going on with the back, as I've already covered, but it's just really cool to see like the little design details I've done in. Just like how I made the rear mount for the steering servo is actually the same mount that is shared with, I don't even know if we can show it. It's the same mount that is shared with the upper ball end right down there. So yeah, it's really hard to show off. So yeah, just cool stuff like that. I don't really think there's a whole lot more I can think of to mention of this. It's just something where I kept goofing around with it whenever I had time and just kind of made something that's really unique. So I'm gonna go away. I have a bunch more stuff to work on today, and we'll clean up the house more. I got that plant that refuses to not look like it's dying. Why? See ya.